Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. You've made it to another Bridging Divides. Today, we're discussing whose gospel are we preaching? Evangelical influence in the future of Black liberation. We're so happy that you've joined us. This is almost our final installment. We have one more in July. Um, Today, we are so happy to be in partnership with Reverend Otis Moss III today. Uh, as our team was thinking about this iteration of our series, we really wanted to lift up the voices of Black clergy, Black and brown clergy, folks of color, and folks on the front line. And so much of our discourse as a nation is grounded in white Christian nationalism. And we really wanted to challenge that, to name how inherited evangelical frameworks can disrupt or dilute our liberative witness. And that's what our team is all about. We are trying to drive folks towards liberation, towards justice. So thank you for coming along on this ride. We believe that this is a conversation weighted in the Black experience, but is going to be resonant for all of us. It should be resonant for all of us. With that, for those of you who don't know, I'm the Chief Program and Impact Officer with our team at Sojo Action as Sojourners. And we'd love to introduce my colleague, Reverend Moya Harris.
Hi, everyone. I'm Reverend Moya Harris, Senior Director of Programs here at Sojourners, and I'm really excited to be in this conversation. I'm also a PhD candidate at Christian Theological Seminary in African American Preaching and Sacred Rhetoric. So I'm really just excited to have this conversation. I will try not to nerd out. So passing it back to you, Brian.
Awesome. I can't wait to hear you nerd out. We love it. Again, at the heart of this webinar is a hermeneutical question. Who gets to interpret the gospel? Through whose eyes and whose interests? And I hope you all already know that it's all of us, right? But we're going to dive into that and really get to the heart of it. Um, Before we introduce our special guest and really give him the honor that he deserves, we want to just ground everybody in this moment. And so, Reverend Moya, can you please lead us in this exercise?
Sure. Before we get started, I just wanted to make sure that we're all grounded in the moment. I don't know about you, but today has been busy. You've done 50 million things. And sometimes we forget to breathe. And breathing is so important. I don't know if you know that when you deep breathe and exhale and inhale, you decrease your cortisol in your body, which is cortisol is the bad stuff. So if you could all just put your feet on the ground, feel the earth underneath your feet. And then we're just going to do some slow, deep breaths together. Breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out. And if you will, after those deep breaths, well, just thinking about your day, think about how you're showing up today. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 means you're in the moment, you're ready, you're focused, and you feel like you just woke up and you got all the energy. That's a 10. But 1 is you're really struggling, you might want to just lay down. And then there's the continuum between it. Where are you? What number are you at right now? Well, as we continue this conversation, and just put it in the chat to see, so we can just see what spectrum we have. I see an 8, a 3. I understand the 3. I was a 3 yesterday. See some other numbers. On a scale of 1 to 10, where are you showing up? 3. Okay, 9, 7.5, 8, 5, 5. Okay. Um, my colleague Brian, what number are you at? I think I'm about a 7 right now. All right. Okay, let's take a deep breath one more time together. Deep breath in and exhale. And we just thank God for the ability to move the in and out oxygen and carbon dioxide so that we can continue on, because God gives us the ability to move and have our being. So I'm going to pass it back to you, Brian.
Thank you, Reverend. I am got a almost 3-year-old who shares the same birthday with Reverend Harris. And let me tell you, 2 minutes before we started, he wanted nothing to do with me. But now that we are talking, he's all around this laptop. And I want to be I want to like be annoyed with that, but this is also what this is about. This is about our future and our present. So I'm glad that he gets to have this in his atmosphere. So I'm about a 7-8 myself right now. Um, Before I introduce you, Reverend, I want to give a shout out to Andressa Oliveira, who I met in Brazil, and I feel like y'all two should meet. She is in the chat, as you see, from Rio de Janeiro, and she is responsible for leading the Black movement for evangelicals across the entire country there. So happy that she gets to hear this conversation and be in partnership with us for the future. So thank you all thank you for joining. Thank you and your team for joining us today. I want to also give a shout out to our colleague Rick, who is always on our sessions, works in a different team, and is also just a warm voice and warm source of feedback for us. And now to our guests, I'm going to read this because it deserves reading. The Reverend Dr. Otis Moss III. He's a senior pastor of Trinity United Church of Christ in Chicago. He's a preacher, poet, activist, author, and filmmaker with an eye toward justice and equality, as evidenced through the gospel of Jesus Christ. His most recent book, Dancing in the Darkness, Spiritual Lessons for Thriving in Turbulent Times, written in 2023. Before that, he wrote Blue Note, Preaching in a Post-Soul World, Finding Hope in the Age of Despair, 2015. He founded Unashamed Media Group, a justice-centered faith-based agency committed to producing and curating stories to inspire the heart and challenge the mind. In October 2020, Dr. Moss created the award-winning short Otis Dream, which is about his grandfather's unsuccessful attempt to vote in 1946, which is an awesome story that I've loved learning about. He's a graduate of Morehouse College, earning a bachelor's degree and earned an MDiv from Yale Divinity School of Doctor in Ministry degrees, Chicago Theological Seminary, where my uncle, who I'm about to write about, went. Dr. Moss preaches a theology of liberation rooted in Black spirituality of love and justice. His passion for African American culture and history, combined with a deep appreciation for jazz and hip hop, have culminated in a unique message of hope and healing through jazz narrative on American democracy. His messages have been featured on the Meditative Stories podcast, as well as on Being Krista Tippett, excuse me. The COVID-19 pandemic provided a new opportunity to convey spiritual messages through a cinematic and sermonic lens. Moss focuses on Black theology and addresses issues such as mass incarceration, environmental justice, and economic inequality. He's ordained in the Progressive National Baptist Convention and United Church of Christ. Dr. Moss was identified by the Baylor University George W. Truett Theological Seminary as one of the 12 most effective preachers in English language in 2018. And but certainly not least, he is married to the amazing Monica Brown Moss, and they are grateful parents of the amazing team of MK and Eli. If you don't know, you're about to find out. I'm going to pass it back to you, Reverend Harris.
Welcome, Rev. Is there anything you want to share before we get started? I'm just glad to have you on this call.
Well, I'm just grateful to be on the call with you all, to have this conversation. Just thank you. Thank you for allowing me just to nerd out Dr. Harris and Reverend Epps in reference to the idea of rhetoric and preaching and the world we currently find ourselves in.
Yeah. And then shout out to my birthday buddy over there. We both have our birthdays next Saturday, so we get to celebrate Juneteenth and beyond.
Oh,
so,
I love it.
Yeah, and shouting out Adam Taylor, who's in the chat as well.
Oh, all right. Hey, Adam.
Yep. So, all right, well, let's get this thing started. So I want to start first just giving a background about Black preaching and the gospel of the Black church. African American preaching is a distinctive form of Christian discourse that has evolved from the historical and cultural experiences of the African American community, particularly shaped by the legacies of slavery and African cultural traditions. The Black church beginning in the Hush Harbors and the Invisible Institution, and you go to the Negro church and then the Black church, you can just do the whole historical thing, but preached a Black gospel. And Black preaching is a cultural form of sacred discourse. African American preaching in North America is historically and contemporarily has been esteemed for its aesthetic, richness, persistent call for justice, and ecclesiastical reform, moral and ethical responsibility, spiritual redemption, and transformation. In the midst of that, all that is there's a rhythm and a soul to Black preaching. But in that gospel, that hermeneutic, that's what we want to get to, the hermeneutic, the interpretation of how we see and understand the gospel through our lived experience. That's what we're really going to dig into today. So I have a question. Do you think Black preaching is inherently prophetic, or is there a nuance to it?
Ooh, that's a wonderful question. Is it inherently prophetic? I could answer it this way, to say that there Black preaching that is deeply connected to the history, the culture, the heritage is always adjacent to what is prophetic. Then there's some preaching that borrows some of the rhetoric of Blackness, but does not have the depth of the culture, the tradition, and the heritage that is not adjacent. Matter of fact, it lives in another country, another zip code in reference to it. And there are those who want the rhetoric without being adjacent to the prophetic. But if you are adjacent to the prophetic, you're going to bump in to some Blackness at some point.
At some point. And even, and what I love about it is that Black preaching doesn't just start here on this continent.
No.
It transcends.
No.
And Dr. Henry Mitchell was one of the first to write about that continuum in Black preaching, Black power. And even looking over here, Black Church Beginnings. That's another good text.
Yes.
I'm going through my comps. That's what this is. It's amazing. You think I'm never gonna remember this stuff, but it's in you. So yeah. So what do you call the Black gospel, the gospel of the Black church? Is there one version or is there many?
I think there's many. Robert Michael Franklin talks about the different modes and modalities of Black religious expression, along with Peter Pears. He talks about, there's community centered, there's personal centered, then there is prophetic. I think that from the way that I frame it is that Black preaching has a necessity to deal with the blues, the existential issues of our time, of our experience. And in facing the blues, we make the choice not to fall into despair. And for those who may not be familiar with this, that blues music within the African American tradition is a music that frames what is existential, what one is experiencing. And the gospel frames what is eschatological, what God shall do, what God is doing, what God will do in the future. And those two things emerged because blues and gospel are the exact same music, but with different lyrics, the exact same chords. And that's the beauty of Black preaching. So the blues musician sounds just like a Mississippi preacher. They sound exactly the same, but they just have two different texts that they're speaking from.
Right. And I would even say those texts might have just be flipped, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, because you've got that problem in the world and then the good news in the gospel.
Yes.
And they just reorder it. So
without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Yeah, that's the rhetorical aspect. So studying the sacred gospel, the sacred rhetoric, because rhetoric is basically how we use communication to bring a message to a specific audience. instead of this notion of rhetoric being something bad all the time. So sacred rhetoric could have been Wu-Tang yesterday during halftime if you
Come
listen
on,
to
come
it
on,
through a
come
certain
on.
lens. So yeah, yeah. So so going from there, what do you consider what differentiates the Black gospel, the interpretation, from other gospels
Well,
interpretation?
the ability to be able to frame, to interpret, to bring a hermeneutic of not only experience, but what I have used, and other scholars have used this term AI, not artificial intelligence, but ancestral intelligence. So there's an
Yeah.
ancestral intelligence that is brought to the table that is used as an interpretive lens within the Black preaching tradition. Now, it is not the only lens, but it is a lens that allows us to see from below versus from above. It allows the wisdom that is passed down from generation to generation. It then creates the moment of improvisation of call and response. I mean, Dr. King is one of the best examples of that. You know, the story, Mahalia Jackson says, you know, tell him about the dream,
Yeah, yeah.
Dr. King. But what I remember my parents saying in terms of what, when he spoke on the mall, most people missed the radical nature of what he had stated
Mm,
because they were not familiar with Black sacred rhetoric. And
mm,
when he started closing, talking about freedom, the Smoky Mountains, freedom, Stone Mountain, they were
mm.
telling me that Black people were going insane. I mean, they were just like shouting like crazy. And the other people from the north are like, what's going on? Why are you? They just thought it was a rhetorical thing.
Mm-hmm,
But for
mm-hmm.
everybody in Georgia, everybody knew that the headquarters of the KKK was Stone Mountain.
Right.
So when they said it, people were like, oh, snap. Dr. King just said we'd taken out the Klan. You know? And then he said, the Smoky Mountains was the headquarters of the KKK. And then the people from Tennessee freaked out. They said, he's saying we're taking out the domestic terrorists. That
Mm-hmm,
freedom is going to ring even from those places. And so that's AI. That's ancestral intelligence. He's
mm-hmm.
pulling from our tradition and then mixing that in there like this amazing sacred DJ, and then drops that track, and a group of people get on the dance floor and said, let's go, let's do
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
And that's the brilliance of this tradition. It is not something that you can pull off of your bookshelf. It's something that you have to sit at someone's feet to be able to absorb.
Right, right. And what's really awesome is that this nature of this call and response really came from the African continent. It
Absolutely.
is,
Absolutely.
I think it's Adisa Alkebulan talks about the spirituality of African American rhetoric. Part of it is that call and response. And also there is a sense of justice speak and
Mm-hmm.
how it shows up in the sacred and the secular, right? It shows up like when we go to family reunions, you get ready to eat, and somebody says, you know, take giving honor to God, who's the head of my life. We bring that spiritual, and we didn't divide that until we came over here.
That's right. That's right.
So what we're seeing now is, and this is where I want to get to the tension, is that Black preaching in some aspects have taken on the characteristics of the captor, has lost the connection to the continent and the influence of this gospel, um, and the danger that occurs when it's especially in the Black church.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, what do you say to a gospel that has been disconnected? So like the plug that goes to African culture has been frayed, and the input is more from a white evangelical um thing, was individualistic kind of gospel.
Mm-hmm.
What are the danger of that in this moment?
The danger is minstrality, the idea of being a minstrel with the gospel, of painting oneself in a certain way without having the the AI, the ancestral intelligence that gives it this broad depth, color, and flavor in reference to the gospel. And the white evangelical spaces are very dangerous for Black people and for Black traditions, because again, they want Black rhythm, but don't want to deal with Black blues. And so you end up with the kind of preaching that has the rhetorical flourishes, but does not have the spiritual, intellectual, nor hermeneutical depth when it's in those spaces, because that's safe. It's in the, and I've seen some of these spaces where they enjoy the Black forms of communication and want to include a call and response. They want the particular rhetorical flourishes, but they want to make sure that the content is framed and safe for a particular brand of religious expression, let me put it that way.
Yes.
And that becomes the danger. And so things are lost. It becomes a watered down gospel. It's similar to when someone co-opts some music and says, this, it's a little bit too funky. It's we got to smooth it down. We got to make it pop. So everybody can accept it. So it loses its edge. It loses the depth. It loses the history. It loses its ability to be able to cross generations because it is located nowhere. It's not.
Wow.
It's not local. It is not located in a specific space. Toni Morrison talks about the fact that when you are specific, when you are local, when you are rooted in your own culture, you automatically become universal. If you attempt to be universal first and you have no rooting, then that's called unseasoned preaching. You take out all the unseasoned, you take the roux out. That's unseasoned preaching.
Right.
So, because you're afraid that somebody might be offended by the hot sauce.
Right.
But the hot sauce is what needs to be in the preaching.
You gotta have hot sauce with the
You got to
preaching.
have hot sauce. Come on now.
And it's interesting because you find places where Africanity, any notion of Africanity attached to the gospel, people consider that false, like a heresy. And I really wrestle with that because, first of all, we all came from Africa.
Right.
Technically. But when I think about the ancestors that wrestled in the Hush Harbor, and even then, they say that in the Hush Harbors, it wasn't necessarily Christian then in the beginning, because we're losing a sense of self. And like you said, you lose the soul of it. And to interpret the scriptures in a way that is harmful, that's what I love about Katie Cannon. She pushed back in the way that Katie Cannon is one of the mothers of womanist theology, and she argued for a way to evaluate Black sermons through a womanist lens that looked for violent language. And then Allen went further to create a framework so that women's voices, the misogynoir that can happen from the pulpit is identified, and then teaching people to listen with that kind of an ear. I don't even know why I went there, but I went there. So,
but I think you hit the nail on the head with that in terms of the necessity to have a frame the ancestral intelligence, as you said, the people in the Hush Harbors, that becomes a part of your hermeneutic lens, and then a womanist lens. Again, it broadens and gives deeper depth to one's not only preaching but one's spirituality. That all of a sudden now you've expanded your lens in terms of you can see the part of the challenge in America is the myopic nature, is that we have these blinders on and we think that the European frame is the global standard. No, it's not. And the beauty of the gospel is that it is interpreted through what is specific. what is local. So Pentecost is bringing all these people together
Right.
who are from different places. And guess what? They're not hearing in Roman language or in Greek. No, they're hearing in their own native tongue. I mean, and the importance of the native tongue. Laman Sane, who was a professor, he talks about the uniqueness of Christianity is that it is the ability for it to be translated, where many other faiths demand that you must speak in a particular language. Here you can speak your own language. And when you speak your own language, it then brings a hermeneutic to the table. And he went further to say in a presentation in one of his books, he said that when the Portuguese first come to West Africa, there was a translation of the gospel in the native languages that was there. And as a result, there was a liberation theology that developed. And they said, oh, yeah, we know Shango. And Shango said we should not be slaves. Get out of here. And so the Portuguese then demanded that you must make them Portuguese first. They must learn our culture so that you can teach them our theology. Otherwise, they will develop their own theology that will be anti-colonial. And that's one of the things when we talk about language. And that's what's the beautiful thing about Black preaching, that it brings the accents and the nuance and the echo of our Africanity to the table. And it does not demand that you have to lose your Africanity to hold your Christianity, that they go together, because we do serve a God that has no problem with our Africanity at all.
How about that? Because in God's image. I mean, it's like you can just bring it all together, because it's like, I think of Henry McNeil Turner, who said way back, God is a Negro.
That's right. That's right.
And was it gosh, De La Torre had a book that talked about the different interpretations of Jesus, Latino Jesus, a Chinese Jesus. It's like, who are we to own? This is the only way to do it. This is the only way to read it. So
that's the power. I was really moved. I had a professor at University of Denver. I was in a program with Dr. Vincent Harding, and I started off there, and I had a professor who was indigenous, and he was talking about the fact that he says, I don't bring the Old Testament to me, Otis. I know that within your tradition, that the Exodus narrative in Black liberation theology, he said, I understand it. He said, but as an indigenous person, he said this, and I never forgot it. He said, you must understand, my people view things from the perspective that we're the Canaanites. So that's an oppressive text for us. He said, now Jesus understands us. Yeah. Because he understands colonization, and he understands displacement, and he understands all that. He said, but knowing that, and I've been Dr. Masala, South African theologian, talked about the same thing, how the Exodus narrative for a South African can be deeply challenging because of that same narrative. So having these voices is so very important for our hermeneutic, and it globalizes us, and we gain greater depth in the process.
Yeah, I mean, Howard Thurman, right?
Come on.
Look, what does he say? The interpretation of Jesus. He was a marginalized Jew.
That's right.
In an occupied territory, and he was poor.
That's right.
So that was the lens. I mean, he was so radical back in the 1940s to be able to bring that vision of Jesus. I mean,
and educated by a womanist before the term womanist was created. His grandmother was the one that gives him the frame of this is how you're supposed to look at Jesus.
Yeah, and don't read none of that Paul stuff, because I don't want to read
That's right. That's right.
It's oppressive to me. So I was like, man, look. Oh man, it's just the genius of the hermeneutic of being able to see the Gospels through your own experience. I mean, this what is it? The Wesleyan quadrilateral talks about it, because and let me see, I'm a Methodist and I'm going to mess this up, but Why did I bring it up? But part of it is the lived experience. It's,
Yes.
and you got scripture, you've got tradition, the biblical your experience, and I can't remember what the fourth one is. So I'm a bad Methodist, but so a colonized gospel that has been used to, I already asked that question, to already to in this time when they're trying to take away our vote, our voice, our culture, our
Mm,
books,
mm,
I mean, they'll use our music so they
mm,
can make money off of it.
mm,
Um, but I want to just, you come from a beautiful, familiar, liberative tradition. You, your grandfather raised your father as a single father. I mean, the mini movie of your grandfather trying to vote, that represented so many of us. Like my folks are
mm,
from Mississippi, and so when I saw that, I saw my people.
mm,
Um, how have you honed your version of the gospel as you have grown in ministry? Because I remember when you were at the Hampton Ministers Conference and you were preaching with your father. What was that? Can Moses and Joshua get along? I remember.
mm. I
And I was just
appreciate that.
starting out in ministry. Yes, I remember that. I was like, whoa, that was a beautiful moment. And so it's like, that was a long time. That was a bit, we're the same age.
Mhm.
So I'm like,
Yeah.
time has moved.
Oh yeah, that
So
was over 20 years ago. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it was. I'm like, oh man. So what is it? How has your God, how your preaching, your liberative lens adjusted over the years? You're in the pulpit that Jeremiah Wright spoke
Mhm.
from. And if any of y'all haven't seen my shirt,
That's a great
um,
shirt.
about everything. But that's another thing. But how have you channeled that and
Mm.
flipped it and reversed it and done all the things that you do?
That's a wonderful question. There's been so much addition, and you start out and you have people that you emulate, and you listen to their stories and things like that, like my father. And I was so grateful that I didn't realize the people who were influencing me that I was around. And I didn't know that I was being influenced, like someone like a Dr. Carolyn Knight, who preached for my father for years, I'm being influenced, being
Mhm,
around someone of her caliber. Along with there was a woman by the name of, I want to tell the story, by the name of Esther Smith,
mhm,
who I called grandma. She was like my father's grandmother because, of course, his parents passed away at a very, very young age. And she became his mother in many ways. Now, what was interesting about her is in a different era, she would have been either a professor of New Testament or Old Testament, or she would have been a preacher.
mhm,
So here's as she was also the founder of the New Era Baptist Convention in Georgia, which was a part of the Progressive National Baptist Convention. She would open up her home, and the preachers who were at ITC, and my father being one of them, would come to her house whenever they were preparing to preach, and they would present their sermons to her. And she would walk through and say, this illustration is nice, but you need to look at this person over here. Um, there's a couple of preachers you need to look at, and here are the people that you need to listen to. She would actually do homiletical critique uh,
mm.
for individuals. She was a walking library,
Wow.
and she studied preachers, and she had stories upon stories upon stories upon stories. And her daughter ended up becoming a Zora Neale Hurston scholar. It was very interesting. So just had this amazing literary mind. And so here I am. This is my adopted grandmother, and I'm hearing her. She would speak for my father's pastoral anniversary.
Mhm,
And she was always saying, I'm not a preacher. She could preach. But she would always say that, she'd start out, but she could tell these extraordinary stories of the height of of apartheid and domestic terror in America, and be able to then talk about how God is present. That was her thing. She could do in such an extraordinary way.
Wow.
And so being influenced by people like that, and then being the opportunity to connect with other people. I mean, I grew up listening to Howard Thurman, but Howard Thurman then becomes a very different person and mentor as I grew older. It's one thing, the echo, it's another thing to have the conversation.
Wow.
So as a child, I had an echo.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But when I became an adult, I was able to have the conversation. I didn't know that the echo that I was hearing was going to allow me to have a conversation with Howard Thurman and his work later on. That's a person, someone like Samuel DeWitt Proctor, another person who's been very influential for me, and having conversations with him when he was living. Vernon Jordan, interestingly enough, who was not a preacher but loved preaching. And I had a conversation with him, and he told one of the most extraordinary stories I have ever heard when he was working in Georgia, trying to get a man freed who had been in jailed. They claimed that he had killed a white man, but it was in self-defense very clearly. But he was eventually sentenced and killed. But he told the story of going to a small southern Georgia town, and that there was no place to that they could stay. They had to stay in someone's house. And he said he will never forget the prayer that was prayed. He said that they were in this person's house, they gathered hands, and he said the husband prayed this prayer, said, "Lord, we thank you that the NAACP has made their way to this town. May you watch over these lawyers so that they may free our people." I mean, he said he had tears by the time the man finished offering this prayer. He said this man prayed over our work. Wow. And a work that eventually we thought it was in vain. He said, but I was just a young person working, interning, but it changed my life. And he said, I believe that was God in that prayer. As we were doing that work, it put me on the path to be the lawyer that I became. I mean, he would tell these kind of stories. He said that prayer made me a lawyer. I mean, he would do those kind of things. And so, you know, those kinds of people and those experiences have been absolutely transformative. Just listening to our elders and connecting with someone like Judy Fentress Williams and Cynthia Hale, people who've been incredibly influential in terms of my development and my growth. Dr. Aaron Parker, Lawrence Carter, who's the retired dean at Morehouse. I mean, just all of these individuals who just poured into me, and it really expanded and shaped my experience to help develop a womanist lens. Alfred Smith, Dr. J. Alfred Smith, huge. Wow. In my life was my grandmother. In many ways, my grandmother's also had multiple pastors. They have the one church she goes to. This is about it. You know, I love me some J. Alfred Smith. My grandmother loved this man. And he was he's so incredibly kind, but he demonstrated how to live a sermon more than anyone I had encountered. And here's what he did. His first wife, who was suffering some major dementia, but he would not go to preach without her. And I remember Monica and I, we took them out to eat after we were in Georgia at the time. We were serving at a church, Tabernacle Baptist Church in Georgia, and we took them out to eat. And I'll never forget how attentive he was to his wife, whose memories were coming and going the entire time we were in having that meal. It was
Mm,
one of the most beautiful things I'd ever seen,
mm,
that he was such a loving man
wow.
and put his love on display. And he that's the way he communicated, that's the way he lived, that's the way he operated. And I remember Monica and I, we left me and both of us were crying. We're like, we love J. Alfred Smith. He's so so we so if I forget my memories, will you remember me? Like we were talking like we want to be like J. Alfred Smith. And it was just a beautiful thing to witness and
Mm,
have that kind of mentorship and witness people in that manner.
that's wonderful. It's just seeing the gospel lived out before you.
Mm-hmm.
That's richer than any book. You
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
know? Wow. So I have one last question. Say there's somebody on the line who might have been preaching a gospel that was detached from their culture, their uh,
Mm,
AI, right?
mm,
And not
mm,
this AI that we're talking about that's making, using water in communities that already don't have water, but this ancestral intelligence. What would
mm,
you say to someone who realizes that they've been preaching a hermeneutic that really wasn't attached to
mm.
their ancestral reality?
I would say it's time to get baptized in black water. To have a baptism in your culture, to read a Dr. King, but also read an Anna Julia Cooper, one of my
Yeah.
favorites. Oh, she's bad to the bone. When and Where I Enter, to hear the struggle. Read Frederick Douglass,
Mhm.
but not only that, then read and then listen to a Proctor and a Prathia Hall. Proctor and Prathia, put those people together. Everybody always says, listen to King. You're gonna hear some King. You'll get to him. But Proctor and Prathia Hall, those individuals, to hear those voices, and then play the songs that come from their era. What were they listening to?
Wow.
Not only quote unquote what was in church, but what also was in the juke joint. So what was the song? In other words, just like the movie Sinners, what were they listening to? What were those songs? And that will give you a different perspective. And I really believe that the spirit will show up in such a way when you immerse yourself in those stories. Then read the gospel, and then you're going to start to see, oh my goodness, this marginalized, dark-skinned Palestinian rabbi, revolutionary savior Jesus is, in many ways, he is in proximity to our culture and the experiences, and all of a sudden the gospel will open up in a different way.
That's
Um,
good. Yeah. 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 And maybe even listen to a little bit of uh some Nas. If I ruled the world,
I
imagine that.
rule the world.
I mean,
Okay,
that's
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 right.
logical right there. What is
That's
what
right.
does your world look like? I could just go down that
or,
road.
or or the Giroux of rap, his lost tapes. We could nerd out on that because I love the lost tapes that when he does the
Uh,
whole Al Giroux thing. I don't anybody who he scats and raps, but he scats and like Al Giroux and then raps like it's insane, and that's why he is one of the best to ever do it.
yes, I agree. I agree. I mean, he's got a hermeneutic. I mean, it's right
Yeah,
there.
he really does.
God's son, right?
That's right. He is a bad joker. He's gifted. He is gifted.
Yeah, yeah. All right, Brian. See, I told you we could nerd out.
Listen, that's my favorite rapper. I came in at the right time. And the son of a jazz musician, right? So,
Oh,
he
come on. Come on.
absolutely, absolutely. I have a question for the chat, and I want to bring up our fearless leader, Adam, to kind of riff on a lot of the things that were said. First, I just want to say thank you so much. Just even listening to the story about the prayer, I had tears coming to my eyes, but more importantly, just let me know that we're covered. The prayers have been prayed. Like we're
Mm,
still praying right now, but
mhm,
folks have been praying for us for for a very long time. So we're going to make it. We are covered, and we have the tools and all the muscle we need to kind of get through. So thank you so much for your words today, and Moya, my God. I got a question for y'all who have joined us today. I'm going to drop it in the chat. Feel free to answer it in the chat. I want you to think about your own stories, the prayers that you've heard throughout your life. Have you experienced a sermon, a worship service, a faith leader that changed the way you understood justice? And while y'all type that into the chat, I want to bring Adam up if you're still available to do so. Listen, I'm not the best at Zoom, but we're going to figure this out, Adam. Bear with me.
I'm glad you're doing that.
Okay, yes, I just did this so I can figure it out. Here you go.
You got
Adam,
this.
you with us?
Hey, I am here. Can you hear me?
Awesome. Yes,
Yes,
thank you.
sir.
All right. Wow. It is so good to see you, Dr. Moss, and Reverend Moya, soon to be Dr. Moya. I think tonight just proved you're already doctor, as far as I'm concerned. And I just want to say for the record, I am peacock proud this conversation is happening, and I was more than happy just to listen in. But I will share just a few thoughts. And Dr. Moss, you could appreciate this. I am literally parked as I normally am on Monday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays at my son's track practice. I know you know a little
Come
bit about
on,
that.
man. Come on.
Yeah. So
What events does he run? Tell you gotta break it
oh
down,
yeah,
man.
of
Come
course.
on,
So
proud
my
dad.
older son is a freshman in high school. He just finished his freshman year. He's had an amazing season. I'm so proud of him. And we're actually going to Greensboro next week for the Adidas National Championship meet. So he's
Wow.
competing in that.
Congratulations.
Yeah. And I'll just one more like proud dad moment. He was a part of a relay, a 4x4 relay, 400 relay, which I know you know about. And he was with three seniors, and my son is the freshman, and they broke their school record, which had been in place since 1968. So I try to put that in perspective to him. I was like, son, you know that's the same year your parents were married. My parents were married, your grandparents, right? So anyway, some exciting things happening.
That's awesome. That's fantastic.
I think I'm going to share a thought, but then I actually do have a question, if I may, that kind of builds on what you've been sharing. So, you know, one of the things that has moved me and shaped me, formed me in my own faith, but also in my own journey of ministry is, and you've kind of referenced this, but the degree to which the Black church provides a hermeneutic that always is rooted in the struggles of the disinherited. And, certainly you referenced Howard Thurman, and that Thurman's been a huge influence on my life and my understanding of what it means to try to live out the gospel. And this kind of understanding that following Jesus is inseparable to a commitment to justice and peace. That those two things literally have to go together. And yet so often they get treated and understood as separable or as optional. And I still think, many of our traditions struggle with that. And we have to be honest with ourselves. Many parts of the Black church tradition still struggle with that, with an overly individualized gospel, or even a kind of health and wealth gospel, prosperity gospel that has perverted our understanding of faith in so many respects. And so one of the things that I've been thinking about, and I've written a little bit about this, but, one of the superpowers, if you will, and I know you're also a fan of Marvel Comics, of the Black church, is that it has enabled so many to be able to sustain their courageous activism because their activism comes out of a deep well of faith, a faith that understands that trouble doesn't last always. It understands that we stand on a rock. That understands that, as you so rightfully put it, there is an ancestral intelligence that is there rooting us on and that is propping us up. And so for me, that has been, really a game changer. I don't think I would still be doing what I'm doing, let alone be president of Sojourners, without that rootedness and without that kind of understanding of, the Black church tradition. The question I have is that, so actually Brian, Reverend Moy, and I were all together at a retreat this last week in Chicago. And I think you might have sent a message to that retreat. I happen to be wearing this shirt. I did not plan this. That is, says, "I believe in the Black Church." It's one that our mutual friend, Reverend Tracy Blackman, I think, created through her initiative, Faith Out Loud. And she gave a brilliant sermon. She didn't call it a sermon, but I'm gonna call it a sermon myself, that talked about the streams of the Black church and the mainline Protestant tradition, and other streams as well, that form a mighty river. And I have felt like my life has been this confluence of these streams. I grew up initially actually in a United Church of Christ church up in the Pacific Northwest. And then it wasn't until I got to Atlanta in college and made a pilgrimage to Ebenezer Baptist Church that I fully discovered the Black church tradition. I knew about it, but I got to experience it firsthand. And I joined that church that same Sunday. And then that's been my home tradition ever since. But, I still have a foot in the mainline Protestant tradition. That's a major part of the Sojourners' constituency and legacy. And, my home is rooted in the Black church. And so I see you as someone that kind of navigates these waters quite a bit yourself. And I'm kind of curious what you think the mainline Protestant church could learn from the Black church, and maybe vice versa, what the Black church could learn from some of the richness of the mainline Protestant tradition.
I think that's a great question. I think that the Protestant tradition outside of Black church tradition, and I will use the musical language, is the, and I'll use jazz as the example. The beauty of jazz and the beauty of what the Black church has been able to do, teach, is in jazz, you have instruments that are not supposed to play together, but they do. The saxophone was designed for a marching band. The piano and the saxophone ain't supposed to play together. The drum is supposed to do 1 and 3 time, not polyrhythms and 2 and 4. The bass is supposed to be with a bow. Don't play it with your fingers. And yet all these instruments play together. That's what the best of the Black church does. But what it adds is what we call improvisation, which is actually also the work of the Spirit, is that each instrument is given the opportunity to solo, meaning that I can bring my own cultural expression to the table to add new flavor to the song.
Yes.
And the way the song sounded the first set doesn't have to be in the second set. What happened at the 7:30 service doesn't have to repeat at the 11 o'clock service. What happened at the organizing rally on Monday does not have to repeat on Friday. The power of the improvisational creativity of the Spirit creating holy mischief and good trouble in the midst of a moment.
Right.
The Black church has been able to do that in an extraordinary way.
Yeah, amen.
That was good. And basically, I'm like, if y'all want more of what he was saying, you need to get his book. And it even has in here the Yale lectures that you did?
Yeah, there, yep.
Yep. I remember seeing the lecture. I was like, oh, book.
Hey, Rimore, can I ask one more question real quick for like 2 minutes? So I also am a big fan of the movie you, if I understand it correctly, co-created with your father. And, it was really about the power of voting, and yet, the history of being denied the freedom to vote. And we were kind of in a moment where we are seeing a lot of history come full circle. And, I'd argue we're in one of the defining civil rights moments of our time after the Cali decision essentially fully gutted the Voting Rights Act. And now we're seeing Louisiana, Tennessee, other states across the South essentially redraw their districts in a racialized manner to try to dilute and essentially destroy Black voting power. And so I'm curious, I mean, my sense, and this is something I really admire about you, is you have a way of speaking across generations. And we know different generations kind of approach voting somewhat differently.
Mhm.
And the kind of message of, I'm going to kind of put this in stark terms, though I don't necessarily communicate it this way, but kind of guilting younger generations into voting because of the struggles and sacrifices of previous generations doesn't always work very well.
Mhm.
And so I'm kind of curious, in this moment where there's so much at stake, and in some ways we need massive voter turnout and voter
Mhm.
protection and election
Right.
protection to get through this thing. How are you communicating the urgency of this moment, particularly to younger generations?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of on two levels.
Yeah.
I always root a lot of my communication in history and then bring up to the present.
Yeah.
This is this third reconstruction. And my father helped me one day because I was really just kind of just ranting one day. And he just said, quiet, for those of you who may know my father and how he talks, it's like a running joke. He's like, let's just go through this way. So those who know him, but Pop is like, just smooth as smooth wants to be. And he said, this is the third reconstruction. Because he said, now remember, the first reconstruction, how far we came from being considered non-human beings.
Mm-hmm.
That first reconstruction, Hiram Revels, that first reconstruction, Robert Smalls, that first reconstruction, that is when most of our historically Black colleges were created and business. I mean, he just went on, he broke it down. He said, but by 1877, that was snatched from us.
Right.
Because of the so-called compromise of 1870. And so we went into a second reconstruction. And the second reconstruction, to get back to where we were, took us all the way from 1877 to 1965. Said when the voting rights bill was passed, we only had a total of 4 Black representatives across the United States. Now we have 62. He said, this is the third reconstruction. Always remember, you will have 3 steps forward, but evil is like a disease. It mutates every generation. And therefore, you must be inoculated every generation. And that's the role of the church. And so if you want to be on the jury for Carmelo Anthony, you better be registered to vote. If you want to ensure that your school is going to receive the necessary funding to stay open, you have to be registered to vote. If you want to make sure that your county, your community, I mean, you can go through the whole piece registering to vote. And the Heritage Foundation is a reaction to the Black Civil Rights Movement. 1973, they specifically said that there's too much forward movement of people of African descent in this country. That's the founding of the Heritage Foundation. Project 2025 is actually Project 1973, when they realized that there was an expansion of the electorate.
That's right.
So they were involved in a revolution to go back to Confederate residue. We have to be a part of the third reconstruction. And here it is. It's not going to happen for our generation. We're just going to put things in place. Brian, this is about your child.
Yes.
We are fighting for him. And I want to become a good ancestor. When people, my grandchildren will be able to say their grandfather and grandmother did what was necessary to put us in position of this third reconstruction. That's what our role and our responsibility is.
Thank you. Amen.
Amen. And you took my words, because I always say that too, Dr. Moss. What am I doing to become a good ancestor for the generations that come after us? Because we're not going to see it in this lifetime.
Right.
I would say I'm a pessimistic prophet. It's gonna happen. I just don't know if I'm gonna see it in my lifetime. Yeah, yeah. That's Henry McNeil Turner. In the end of his life, he became a pessimistic prophet. He had hope. It's just it was delayed.
But you're a music lover, so here's the thing.
Yeah.
All music, no sound we create ever disappears. It may dissipate, but it doesn't disappear, which means the sound you put in the world will continue to circle the earth for eternity. So make sure it's the right sound.
Right.
And even that whisper is enough to move into someone's ear and into their spirit that can change their life. And I just believe that some of the sounds of a person by the name of Jesus is still floating around. And every once in a while on a Sunday, they ain't joining because of no church or some song. No, they're joining because that dissipated sound is still roaming around the earth.
Ashe. Yeah.
Y'all have just reminded me of a reel that I just watched from a producer that was saying that he's made just as much money from his top pop hit as he did from his gospel hit. The pop hit made him instant money. It went multi-platinum immediately, but then the sales dipped off. The gospel hit never saw that kind of traction, but the folks who are attached to that music keep coming back to it. They keep listening to it. And so it has sold just as much, right? The sound sticks with us, right?
Come on.
Um, so again, I just want to thank y'all for what you've left us. We try to center our work in not just a fight, but also joy. And so I want to encourage everybody who's been with us today to remain joyful in this work, to work, but to remain joyful while we do it. And I want you to do that work with us, if possible. We're encouraging everybody, if you're able, to join us during a few different practices over the next few weeks. You can check out our website for continued conversations that we'll be having, as well as opportunities to take action. Specifically, we have some trainings coming up. Opportunities to be at the polls during election day, to serve as chaplains, opportunities to be trained in nonviolent resistance during this moment. I mentioned at the start of this conversation that this is the next to last session. Our very next session of Bridging Divides will be moderated by our own Reverend Adam Taylor. So thank you so much for coming and bridging things for us today, Adam. And we also have a few cohorts. If you're interested in learning in community and being in community with others, building your skills. For example, we have a Pluralism Leadership Academy coming up next month. Reverend Moss, anything you want to share about your books from your own mouth or for your other projects from your own mouth that we can lift up as well?
Well, we have the other book, Dancing in the Darkness. That's not a book on preaching or anything of that nature. But you are too funny, Doc. You are too funny. But we have several films coming out. You know, we mentioned about Otis's Dream. That's about my grandfather. We have several that we just completed, and we have in production for one. One is called Blue Notes, which follows one of this generation's greatest guitarists by the name of Isaiah Sharkey. If you don't know the name, you've heard him. If you like D'Angelo, you heard him. If you like Raphael Sadiq, you heard him. If you like Robert Glasper, you heard him. He's the guitarist for all these cats. And we follow Isaiah from Chicago. His father was also a Pentecostal minister, to Mississippi, and film him in Mississippi. Then we follow him all the way to Senegal, the roots of the blue notes that he plays in the guitar. And he meets a musician by the name of Numa Kunda, who plays the kora, which is the instrument, it's a 21-string instrument that is the precursor to the banjo and to the style of blues in Mississippi. And they do a concert together, but they can't speak the same language. They only speak through notes. And we were able to record this amazing concert, and that's Blue Notes. It'll have a curriculum with it. Then we have a narrative that we did called Our Daily Bread, that is a short film about a woman who has to make some moral decisions in reference to caring for her family. And we're excited about that. And we are in pre-production for a film about my father that we've recorded him, a documentary about his experience in the civil rights movement, his work. It's entitled The Witness, and I won't give it away, but he told a story that we did not know, but we captured, and we were sitting there with our eyes bugging out that we had no idea that Pop was involved in terms of something that everybody on this stream has experienced, but I had no idea that my father actually was a part of reshaping so that we would all have this experience. But anyway, I can't give it away, but that hopefully that'll be out. We'll be finished with that one next year. We have a couple of others that are also in pre-production, but we're really excited about the production of these films that we're putting out.
Please keep us up to date on those projects so we can continue to share them out. I want to thank everybody who's joined us today, everybody who's going to be watching this in the future. Thank you so much for your time and for being in community with us. We can't wait to see you next time. We won't pray you out, but our prayer, in short, is that you continue to be safe, that you continue to go with God, that you continue to have joy in your hearts, even in this moment of struggle, right? And we're here with you in community. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Courtney and Reverend Harris again. Take care.
Thank you. Oh, this is DuSable. Somebody asked about who is that? That's the founder of Chicago.
Chicago. This is DuSable Museum. Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Yep. Awesome. Good night, everyone. Thanks, Doc.
Thank you.
You're welcome.